Elden Ring's DLC is designed for endgame characters. Level 150, fully upgraded weapons, armor, talismans, spirit summons, everything. And even then, it's the most challenging content in the game. But what if instead of entering the DLC with a fully prepared character, I did the opposite? What if I entered with a level 1 character with an empty inventory? That's what this video is about. So here's what I did. I reached the entrance to the DLC with a level 1 character, and then I discarded everything from my inventory. Weapons, armor, talismans, consumables, upgrade materials, all gone. The only exceptions were my HP flask, FP flask, torrent whistle, and flask of wondrous physic, since I can't get rid of those. From here, the rules are pretty simple. How far can I make it by only using things I find in the DLC? After that, anything goes, like leveling up is fair game. But there's one very important feature of this challenge. Since I'm only using things I find, that includes upgrade materials, so going back to the round table hold to buy smithing stones is off limits. Also, I'm restricting myself to only the first region of the map, the gravesite plains. This is mostly to make the challenge more interesting by limiting my options because I thought it might be too easy if I had access to the whole map. The goal will be to defeat the first major boss, the Dancing Lion. If I can do that, I'll consider this a success. Let's get started. I began my journey by trying to punch some enemies at the Scorched Ruins. I didn't really feel like spending 10 minutes to kill a single enemy, so I moved on to find a weapon. The first thing that came to mind were the Beast Claws, as they were available right near the start. However, to get them, I would need to defeat Mr. Loger. Now, I knew I had no shot at beating him in a fair fight, but who said it had to be fair? Oh! That actually worked! Do I get the weapon? I do, yes! And with that, I had a weapon and 3,000 runes to spend on leveling up. Before leveling though, I rode north to the Church of Consolation so I could grab the 2 Erdtree fragments that were inside. I then rode over to the 3-path cross site of grace and grabbed one more fragment. I spent my runes on leveling my strength to 13 and my dexterity to 11, as those were the minimum required stats to use the Beast Claws. Next, I used the 3 Erdtree fragments I had to raise my Erdtree blessing to level 2. This is the main thing people keep underestimating with the DLC. It's impactful. Not only was I now getting a 10% boost to my damage, but my defenses got bumped up by a lot too. Even with no armor, my physical damage negation had gone from 0 to 9%. That's not nothing. Anyway, I rode back over to the Scorched Ruins to try out the Beast Claws. That's when I realized I'd made a great choice. Beast Claws can inflict bleed, and the Savage Claws skill on the weapon made it easy to proc bleed as well. The great thing about bleed is that it does a huge chunk of damage, and the damage from it proccing is the same even if the weapon isn't upgraded. So already, I had a viable way to kill standard enemies susceptible to bleed despite only being level 5. I killed a few more enemies for some easy runes, but I still had to be careful because they could almost certainly one-shot me. I then jumped up the ruins to reach the chest at the top. Here, I got the Blade of Mercy talisman. This was another great early find since it boosts attack power by 20% for 20 seconds after landing a critical hit. I then rode north to find this guy with a pot on his head. Always be on the lookout for these guys. Killing him was a little scary with the surrounding enemies, but I did it and I was rewarded with another Erdtree fragment. From here, I rode north to grab the backhand blades to give myself another weapon option. For now though, I'd stick with the Beast Claws because bleed just seemed too good. I spent my runes to level up 5 more times with more strength and dex. I considered vigor, but I also thought I'd probably get one shot regardless at this point, so I ignored it for now. I then rode west toward Bellerot. On the way, I grabbed yet another fragment, so I upgraded my blessing to level 3. Time for the dungeon. Obviously I was doing this too early, but I wanted to at least see how bad it was, and hopefully find some more tools or upgrade materials along the way. After running past the first giant scorpion, I was met with a horde of little ones. This is one of the reasons I love doing challenge runs. It turns what is usually a non-threat into an actual encounter where I had to be mindful of spacing and find the right level of aggression. Also, I noticed that I wasn't dying in one hit. This was encouraging. Feeling confident, I was immediately humbled by a scorpion waiting to ambush me up the stairs. The second time, I baited out the attack and then ran past. Reaching the first checkpoint, I decided to spend all my runes on leveling vigor. Even though most enemies would still one-shot me, it seemed worth it for encounters with smaller enemies, and hopefully it would eventually be enough for even the big guys. Speaking of which, there was a big shadow guy just ahead. I kinda figured I'd be in trouble, but the Beast Claws managed to stun lock him, and this did the trick alongside bleed damage. It still took a while to kill him though, and I'm kinda lazy, so I decided to mess around with some good old-fashioned ladder shenanigans too. Easy money. Continuing through Bellerot, I ran past the rest of the enemies and dodged the magic to reach the next checkpoint. Now, let's see if I can take out this big guy, and I'm dead. I tried fighting him a few more times, but I think he's immune to bleed, so that was a non-starter. The good news was that I noticed that not every move was a one-shot, so I definitely made the right call by investing points into vigor. Up ahead, I defeated another big shadow enemy. and he dropped a Smithing Stone 6, my first upgrade material. This was a good start, and hopefully the first of many, because as a reminder, I was restricting myself to only use upgrade materials I actually found in the DLC area. I ran into the next room, guarded by more giant scorpions, and grabbed the bone bow. I figured this would be a great option to have once I got some arrows. Next, I jumped over some nearby rubble, which led me to a secret room. I was immediately grabbed by a bug enemy, but I mashed fast enough to escape the grab before it killed me. Inside this area, I found another Erdtree fragment, and right outside, I picked up the dried bouquet talisman. This provides a 20% damage boost for 30 seconds after a summoned spirit dies. So if I ever found any spirit ashes, this would be a solid option. After that, I ran along the rooftops where the stonebird enemies are, and I picked up 3 level 2 smithing stones. So from here on out, I'm not going to cover every single smithing stone I find, but just understand that I'm pretty much constantly scouring areas to find them, and I'll update you periodically. Eventually, after a bit of trial and error, I managed to run past all the enemies except the final big guy at the end. I was pretty nervous. Oh my god. Get fucked. And there you go. I'd made it to the checkpoint outside the dancing lion fight. I thought it'd be a good idea to at least attempt it to get a baseline, and I'm happy to say I dealt 82 damage before dying. Excellent job, me. I saw that I could summon Freya though, so I was curious how much she could do on her own if I summoned her and then just stood back to watch. She survived for 3 minutes and managed to deal about 15% of the boss's health. Not terrible, but she definitely wasn't going to carry me. Now seemed like a good time to move on. To the north, I grabbed the Great Katana near the Ghost Flame Dragon. I didn't have the stats for it right now, but I wanted it as another potential option for later. So far, we're about an hour into the run, and this is what my stats look like. I rode east across the Elec Great Bridge, and in the camp, I picked up yet another fragment allowing me to boost my blessing to level 4. Just north of here, I followed this path leading to a little room where I picked up the Spelldrake Talisman +3. This boosted my magic damage negation to 42%. I decided to stop messing around and go to the place I knew I should have gone from the start, the Ruined Forge lava intake. Smithing stones would be the key to any type of success for this challenge, and this area had a bunch of them. Now, I could have just run in, grabbed the stones, and left, but as a matter of principle, I wanted to prove I could at least kill one golem before taking any of the stones. For this, I went with the backhand blades since their blind spot weapon skill allowed me to get behind him easily. From here, it was simply a matter of hitting his weak spot a few times to get him to stagger and then backstabbing him. The issue, of course, is that I was using an unupgraded weapon on a low-level character, and this meant I would need to backstab him quite a few times in a row, and even a single mistake would result in me getting one shot and needing to start over. I died again, and again, and again, and again. Then, I figured out the trick. Assuming he wasn't pressed up against a wall, after landing a backstab, all I needed to do was run over, charge a heavy attack, and land it just as he was standing back up, and this would instantly trigger a follow-up stagger. I could chain this together indefinitely, and that's exactly what I did. In the end, this worked, and I counted 18 staggers to finally get him. I was also rewarded with him dropping a Smithing Stone 6 and 7 for my efforts. After this, I gathered up all the Smithing Stones in the area, and I even killed the rest of the golems. I also grabbed the new Smith Script dagger throwing weapon. In the end, here was my upgrade stone situation. Not bad. However, this would all be for nothing if I couldn't find at least 12 level 1 smithing stones. I was worried about this since it was very possible I wouldn't find any more within the starting area, and I don't think any enemies dropped them either, so farming wasn't an option. For now, I pushed ahead. Outside, I tried out the throwing daggers on the big ogre enemies. The dagger's damage and range is pretty underwhelming, but I figured out you can abuse the jumping heavy attack to land repeated headshots, and this leads to easy staggers. I had a pretty fun time fighting these guys. Next, I decided to take on Castle Ensis in hopes of finding more upgrade materials. I ran past all the enemies at the start, grabbed the Milady Light Greatsword as another weapon option, and then reached the first checkpoint where I picked up another Erdtree fragment. From here, I started actually killing most of the remaining enemies in my path using the Beast Claws. I also used some good old-fashioned bow shenanigans to take out a few dogs. Here's a fun strat you can do with the crossbow soldiers. They apparently hate walking. If you approach them, they take out their melee weapons, but if you back up even a little, they switch back to the crossbow. During this weapon switching process, they're left wide open, so I abused this to safely take them out. It was pretty funny watching them switch back and forth with no success on their end. Another fun strat, gravity is once again an effective option with the Black Knight. Just send the elevator up, stand to the side, and boom, easy runes. I eventually made it to the end of the dungeon, but sadly I barely found any upgrade materials along the way. Back to the overworld. I rode south until I reached another of Miquella's crosses, and I grabbed another fragment. This was enough to boost my blessing to level 5. Without leaving the starting zone, I think this is as high as I could go up. So not only was I getting a 25% damage boost, but my damage negation was a whopping 20% even without armor. Tiolier was sitting next to the site of grace, and I bought the deadly poison perfume bottle from him. Poison is always a gimmicky and potentially effective strat in FromSoft games, so I figured it was a good option to have. Next, using the cliffside nearby, I jumped down to the lower region of the area all the way to the riverbed underneath the Great Bridge. Here, I went through the waterfall and found the two-headed turtle talisman, which greatly boosted my stamina recovery. I also realized I'd found some pants, so I decided to cover up. Next, I went to the Dragon's Pit cave, and what do you know, I found 6 level 1 smithing stones right at the start. Huge. With this and the other stones I actually had enough to get a +8 weapon. However, since I'm indecisive and didn't know what I wanted to commit to yet, I held off on upgrading for now. Also, I thought it would just be more interesting to see more of this DLC through the lens of an unupgraded weapon. Speaking of which, I switched to the Great Katana. The damage is solid, I like the moveset, and it inflicts bleed just like the Beast Claws. I then found a path leading to the upper plateau area of the region, and I actually totally missed this on my first playthrough. While here, I grabbed the Incursion painting. I also jumped down to the Church of Benediction and grabbed the Oathseeker Knight armor set. I put it on immediately, and I was still able to medium roll. And most importantly, my damage negation was now all the way up to 40%. Yes, armor matters. With this, I wanted to do another vibe check on the Dancing Lion. I also wanted to test out the poison bottles. Despite not having enough arcane to equip it properly, I could still inflict poison. The best way to do this was with the weapon skill, but this had the unfortunate side effect of poisoning me too. And sadly, even after poisoning the lion, the damage just wasn't that impressive, and it didn't last that long. Still though, using this strategy alongside the NPC summon, I was able to get him all the way to phase 2, which I thought was pretty solid given the circumstances. Anyway, back to exploring. I fought one of the big chakram enemies right at the start of the gravesite plains with my Great Katana, and after a couple minutes, I managed to take him down. He dropped the Cursed Blade Mask, and when equipped, this boosted my dexterity by 5 at the cost of slightly reducing the healing from my Crimson Flask. I also rode around killing some of the stone birds because I noticed they dropped smithing stones 3, 4, and 5 at random. Then I found the location of the Incursion painting, and my reward was the Serpent Crest Shield, a pretty great medium shield that I would also end up using. Next to this was the Bellerot Jail, and I decided to enter it to once again hopefully find more materials. I also tried using the Milady here just for fun. Pro tip I discovered, you know the human flesh blob enemies? They have a grab attack, but since it takes a while to pull you in, I discovered you can actually take 0 damage here if you just mash fast enough to escape. Very good to keep in mind. Eventually, I made it to the bottom of the jail to the Demi-Human Swordmaster. This guy is fucking awesome, and because I didn't struggle with him on my first playthrough, I never realized just how many moves he has. He'll deflect your attacks, teleport around, and do tons of magic sword combos that inflict frostbite. He even has a grab attack where he uses the force to toss you around. This guy is just Yoda from the prequels. He was killing me in 2 to 3 hits, and sometimes this would come in one combo that guaranteed death if I got hit by the first attack. I was doing my best using the Milady for this, and I wasn't seriously hoping to beat him, but I thought it'd be fun to try still. Then I switched back to the Great Katana, and I don't know, something clicked for me. I start off by avoiding his attack, and then going for a backstab. I missed the backstab, but I land a few hits still. I go in, jump attack, and follow up with the light attack. He deflects this, but I discovered that the trick is to just keep attacking, because I could still interrupt his follow-up. I dodge the jump attack, and go for another backstab, but I'm not quite close enough again. Still though, I land a couple hits and proc bleed. 1, 2, 3. I avoid the grab attack and use the end lag to land a charged heavy which leads into a stagger. Big damage, bleed procs again, and I get the damage boost from the Blade of Mercy talisman. Then I land some more hits and figure out I can kind of bully him with the overhead stance heavy attack skill on my Great Katana. This leads to another stagger. More damage, and my buff is refreshed. I mostly avoid his flurry attack, roll away, and finally this time I managed to punish his jumping attack with a backstab after he falls in a weird way. I follow up with a few more overhead and light attacks. He starts landing more hits, but I just try not to panic and play safe. Another jump attack from him, and another backstab punish from me. I'll let the rest play out without commentary. Yep, I beat this guy with an unupgraded weapon. I was incredibly pumped. I also got his Spirit Ashes as a reward. This encounter reminded me of how good bleed is. I went back to the Dancing Lion to see if he could be bled too, and yep, it turns out he can be. With this knowledge, the Great Katana seemed like the best weapon choice to invest my smithing stones into. Before committing though, I wanted to get a few more stones. and I also thought it would just be kind of fun to stay at +0 for longer. I went to the Fog Rift Catacombs next. There's a very easy to miss secret here. If you go up near where you can find the Great Ghost Glovewort, you can jump off the side right here to get on top of the spikes. From here, you just follow the passage to collect the Spirit Ashes for the Black Knight Commander. Between this and the Demi-Human Ashes, I decided I wanted to try summoning, so I started leveling up my mind. I also decided to go with the Black Knight Ashes since they only cost 111 FP compared to the 129 for the Demi-Human. I was feeling confident after the last boss, so I tried to take on the Death Knight. Sadly, he was immune to bleed damage, so I was kinda screwed from the start. However, I did figure out you can punish most of his attacks with a backstab. Right as he finishes a combo, you just roll toward him and go for the backstab. I did this for 6 minutes straight and managed to deal a little over half of his health, but I sadly messed up, got grabbed, and died. I was satisfied enough with that and decided to move on for now. Here's another Smithing Stone update. Basically, I just needed to get one more Smithing Stone 4. So I went out to kill a few of the stone birds until they dropped one. With that acquired, that was enough for me to upgrade my Great Katana all the way to +17, and I made it keen to give it extra dex scaling. Because the golems in the lava intake area dropped level 6 and 7 smithing stones, I technically could have grinded to get to +21, but I didn't want to do any more farming than I already had, and I thought it would be more interesting at a lower level anyway. From here, I almost felt ready to take on the Dancing Lion, but first I wanted to kill the giant furnace golem outside. Now, I don't love these guys, and I think they take way too long to kill even outside of a challenge run, but they're not too bad. It's all about just jumping over their attacks, wailing on their legs, and staggering them 3 times to make them fall over for a critical hit. Another pro tip, you can use the iframes from getting on or off your horse to avoid the explosion from the jump attack. You're better off running away, of course, but hey, it looks cool. Just, be careful. The timing is pretty tight. After a few failed attempts, I took it down, and my reward was the Deflecting Hardtear. This is my favorite new item in the DLC. During its 5-minute duration, perfectly timed blocks cost almost no stamina, have a higher damage negation, and as a bonus, guard counters after perfect blocks deal extra damage. Honestly, this item should be a talisman or base game mechanic. It just slots into the combat loop so well and makes defensive play far more active. To test this out, I went back to the Death Knight. I still used my backstab strategy, but I also mixed in some perfect block guard counters to stagger him as well, and after a few minutes, I got him. My reward was the Crimson Amber Medallion +3. I equipped this right away. But now, finally, it was time for the main event, the Dancing Lion. Here's what my build looked like. Only being level 65 with a +17 weapon would make this very hard, but I felt it was doable. I also decided to ignore summoning Freya to make it more fun. The first part of my strategy was using the Black Knight Spirit Ashes. Since I didn't find any Glovewort to level him up, he would do almost no damage and get annihilated right at the start of the fight. Revered Spirit Ash Blessings hardly make a difference when the Spirit Summon is unupgraded. However, him getting killed was exactly what I wanted. With the Dried Bouquet Talisman equipped, I would get a 20% damage boost for 30 seconds after his death. As another part of this opening strategy, I noticed that the lion would often lunge in with an attack. If I perfect blocked with a katana, I would get knocked back and not have time for a follow-up. But if I perfect blocked with my shield, I would stay standing and it would lead into an enhanced guard counter every time. From here, it was all about the jumping attacks to trigger the stance break. Additionally, every time I got a stance break, I would make sure to get another hit in for bonus damage before going for the critical. Then, as the critical finished, I would get one more hit in as he was getting up. Little things like this add up, and I needed every bit of help. Also, I do want to mention that I crafted some hefty fire pots. My hope was that they would do huge damage during the lion's ice phase, but sadly, it seems like this damage is the same regardless of when I hit him, and it's just not super impressive. And then yeah, from here it was just a matter of actually learning the fight and dying lots of times in the process. So after many failed attempts, here's how it went. And there you go. Challenge complete. I had beaten the Dancing Lion after starting at level 1 and only using things I found in the first region of the DLC. Now, obviously I could continue the run, but I think it's best to call it here since it would simply get a lot less interesting. This specific challenge is most fun at the start when you have nothing, and past this point, especially as I fully upgraded my weapon and gained a few more levels, I think it would resemble a normal playthrough a bit too closely. So yeah, nothing crazy, but I had a great time with this mini challenge. Whenever I do something like this, I always learn a few things along the way because of how I'm forced to change my approach from a normal playthrough, and this one was no different. As a bonus, here's how I killed Moog to set up the challenge on my level 1 character in case you want to try it for yourself. Shout out to Soul Obsession, a channel with only 23 subscribers for his video showcasing the strategy that got me through it. Basically, you go in with a plus 10 Bloodhound Fang, drink your Physic with the Strength and Dexterity Crystal Tears inside, apply Blood Grease, and then shackle Moog. From there, if you just follow what you see on screen, this will just work, and you can entirely skip phase 2. I had to modify the strategy slightly by giving myself an extra buff from Golden Vow since my stats were lower, but aside from that, it worked exactly as advertised. Turns out you can heavily cheese Moog even at level 1. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and keep an eye out for more videos soon.